What would make a man say to a woman, "You don't know men at all"? Popular mentions, when she starts a sentence with a real man. When she says all men/men are. Doesn't stand for bone her all the time when she tells him what a man is, how he thinks, doesn't think he has a tough time. I saw a woman on TikTok say that men prefer relationships where they put in most of the work, because they love things more if they invest in them. Every man in the comments was telling her she was full of, and that she didn't know men at all. She took that as proof that she was right. Why don't you get a girlfriend? Why don't you start dating again? Why don't you sleep around, have some fun? Or anything else that implies finding a date is easy for a man. A friend of mine figured men expressing less emotions equals men aren't as emotionally complex. When they pop off with "you're not a real man if you don't agree with some her and her friends come up with." When they like someone and try to make him jealous or play hard to get. Having her being offended at the possibility a man doesn't want to sleep with her, especially if this man is someone she's in a relationship with. Sometimes men aren't in the mood, or we would be, but we just made this plate of nachos. When women assume the reason men don't like them because they feel intimidated or emasculated by them. Anytime a woman gives dating advice to a man, assuming that the dating experience of men is the same as women's. When she tries to spur a guy into making a move by hitting on another guy. Probably any sentence that starts with all men. Thinking everything is easier for guys, or that we have plenty of women everywhere as options, or that we just think about all the time. Anytime they make a broadly generalized statement. If a statement starts with all men, no men, or "you're only a man if," then I'm out. When they are confused about why we don't act like women. When I get told to write female characters like they are men in the same situation, then swap the he to she. Every time I have tried this I get, "Does the author even know any women?" When in a life or death sword fight, yeah, men and women are the same except for some really rare anatomical situations that are basically never going to come up, but in society and social situations, yeah, the expectations on each gender in a society that is dominated by one or the other plays a part in like everything. It immediately makes me think that the women telling me to write women like I would men just don't have an answer for me and just want to feel like they know what they are talking about. I'm not judging you on one facet of your past, financial, moral, etc., but judging you on amazing ability to make very bad decisions. That's why I don't want a relationship with you. Them saying all me want is all men want, but is not all the want. When they think men are looking for the same thing in a relationship as they. And think we are intimidated by them for their jobs, house, car, etc. There was that lady a few days ago who asked a question about how she's confused on why men seem to flirt and hang with each other and not with women in the workplace. The vibe I got reading it was just, ugh. On the UK Channel 4 app ALL4 there's a documentary made by a woman trying out OnlyFans to see what the fuss is and if she can make a go of it. It's a complete failure and she gets one subscriber in several months. I suspect it's her boyfriend. I have never seen someone so blind to the male psyche and what might make one invested in a stranger enough to pay money to follow them. I don't subscribe to OnlyFans because there's enough free out there and my emotional needs are met in a relationship, but if I did it would be because it would offer interactivity and engagement in something closer to a relationship than just image on a screen. She just does cold, impersonal, vaguely things, wearing a mask, hiding her personality and not engaging with her prospective audience at all. She takes it for granted that men will be fawning over her because she's shown a small amount of skin and is bitter. When they're not. At one point she interviews a male OnlyFans star and he tells her that the secret to his success is that he shares his life and actively tries to open up and engage with his fans. She does not take this advice. It comes across as though she feels entitled to male attention for little to no effort. She isn't self-aware enough to see this is why she's failing. I've never seen someone so not understand men in my life. Lady, we have all that we could ever watch in one lifetime and never see the same clip twice. If you're just offering mediocre with no emotional engagement yourself and you have an expectation that all the men will flock to you, you're going to fail. When they say you don't know what it's like to be scared when walking alone at night, like I genuinely get so on edge and nervous if I'm walking at night, especially if I'm alone. Like yes, I am a man, but I can't stop a knife/bullet. When they keep male orbiters as pets. He's not your just friends, Jennifer, he wants to insert his train into your tunnel of love. When they say just go talk to her. What's the worst that can happen? Get blasted online as a creep, and have my entire life ruined? Or, woman, the person who asks for the date pays for the date. This is law me, fair enough, would you ever ask a man out on a date? Woman, you know. Women who ask men out, Look desperate. Me, cool story. A woman saying all men and then a generalization. When you make your own little narratives in your own little heads instead of listening to what we say. Because we say what we mean, and we mean what we say. A post I read this morning on this subreddit, where OP complained that no man intervened to deal with a guy who was harassing her at her work. The comments were full of men telling OP they don't feel inclined to defend a stranger as there is no benefit to it, only risk. The women in the comments were utterly at the notion that guys don't want to be the white knight. I myself had a short argument with a woman who kept saying don't involve yourself if you feel unsafe, but it's the heroic thing to jump to a woman's defense. That was the sort of argument that made me say, of course you would say that. You're a woman. She seemed to have some weird fantasy that if a man involves himself in such a situation and tells the would magically listen. I genuinely think it didn't register to her that such an intervention often escalates into violence, as if toxic masculinity isn't a mainstream concept for more than a decade now. If she were in that position the risk of violence would be small, therefore I think she assumed the same is true for men. Thus we were being jerks for not helping out a woman when we could. It was weird, because it definitely showed a woman's privilege in these circumstances. Whenever a woman comes here and tries to explain to a man that it's okay to show emotion, all of the men here gang up and say she doesn't know what it's like to be a man. It's kind of funny. Men don't know what it's like to be afraid to walk alone at night. I've seen this one so many times and it's ridiculous. All the crime statistics I've seen show that men are more likely to be victims of violent crime. When you point it out, they often respond with, but the people committing these crimes are men too, which is a nonsensical response. Crime doesn't become less serious when the perpetrator and the victim have the same genitals. Women projecting on men. Shoe on head video. Women roasts men's living spaces. https://youtube.b/llgcmv4bk https://youtube.b/llgcmv4bk. I knew an 18-year-old that claimed multiple times she was done with men, saying how we as an entire just use women and dump them when we get bored, along with cheating on women with their friends and other women. I told her that's the men she's been with, not all of us are out to do that. She didn't believe me and believed that I'd do all those things if I could. My girlfriend would disagree. Almost anything relating to how men feel or think. Men tend to literally think in different ways than women, like their brains are wired differently. That's why women tend to overthink things men do when they themselves barely put a tuft in what they did. Or the classic wanting to talk about the problem and how they feel about it vs how to solve it. Or how men tend to be way more literal and direct. When they don't understand that is actually more than just for us. This happens in two ways. A. When we don't instantly jump any women that gives us the chance to have. Like, yeah, I actually want to have with people I really care about and have a connection with. I don't want to just have sloppy, with randos. Shocker that a person with a would think this way, I know. B. When in a relationship that all you care about is sex gets way overused. First off, many men do make and maintain connections through. So keeping that up is a very important part of the relationship, but it isn't the only thing. Rather, if your relationship was a house, for example, would be something like the dry wall. Friendship and mutual respect would be the studs. Maybe sharing a sense of humor would be the lighting, etc. So it isn't the absolute foundation of the relationship, but if you don't have it or it isn't good, well, it's a pretty sucky house to live in. Men only want nat. Don't get me wrong, definitely want, but also want lots more than just that. When an average-looking woman who has had lots of partners says something like, if I was a guy, nobody would be shaming me. Like, yeah, you aren't wrong, but not for the reason you think. They largely don't care unless it benefits them. Her not knowing men at all. When they talk about how all men have privilege and benefit from the patriarchy. It's easier to live in delusion. Just ask them if they know any single women, you'll find out pretty quickly what they actually think. It took me a long time to come up with a good reply to that one. Oh? And just where do these easy women hang out at? Supply chain blockages has caused shortages at the girlfriend store. I just can't get one. Even my pre-orders got cancelled. Often said by people who don't know the difference between emotional complexity and just flat out being emotional. Also, we have an additional layer of emotional complexity, which is, does society expect me to hide this emotion or not? Oh my gosh. A real man would stand up and talk to me now. No, a real man can walk away from an intoxicated person just screaming at them. I had a couple that I was serving drinks to tell me that real men don't use straws. They both ordered margaritas, the woman used one, the man did not. My only thought was, what other asinine rules can we come up with to apply to 50% of the population? Sheesh. Unless you have a swinging between your legs, you don't get to tell me what a real man is. I've experienced this many times. I've also had the classic "I would have said yes if you just asked a few more times." You need to show determination. That reminds me of one place I was working at, and we had a new manager start. She was a very unlikable person, and she was one of those people that you could tell wasn't listening to what you said, and she had already made up her mind about something. She started some off the leads, including me, and one of the female leads made a comment how the male leads were getting mad because they didn't know how to react to a strong woman leader. It wasn't long after where that female lead actually had a meeting with the new manager, and the lead came out red-faced after the discussion. Someone asked her how it went, and she said she didn't want to talk about it. She wasn't a fan of that manager anymore, lol. He doesn't like you because you're a strong woman. I had this exact conversation at the end of Bad Dates. Me not liking you has nothing to do with you being a strong woman, but everything to do with you being an abrasive, self-centered. This reminds me of the new show that came out of Netflix called Singles Inferno. Some of the female crowd seem to have chosen to support one woman in particular who I believe is currently in an pre-med Ivy League medical school curriculum, which is a cool thing by itself. But it's weird how some of her fan supporters, which I don't think she herself pushes the narrative, will say that any man that doesn't choose her on the show is intimidated by her, by a real queen who knows her worth. It couldn't possibly be because some of those men on the show have a preference for the other women that are on the show. The only women that's ever actually intimidating is your grandmother wielding a wooden spoon when you come into her clean house with muddy boots on. Download Tinder, it's so great for your self-esteem. A week later, actual interaction between my sister and her guy best friend. I agree so much. The dating advice people give men is ridiculous. Just be confident, bro, stop looking and it'll happen, you'll find someone. A classic from married women online, especially Reddit. Why do single men care about not having what I myself have? 99.99% of just stop looking and a relationship will happen naturally. My 100% true women don't know what it's like to date women. I saw a comment one time along the lines of, it is so easy for men to be successful at online dating, but most men are morons and don't know how to dress or take a photo. Pretty much any man could be in the top 5% of men if they learn these things. I don't doubt that dressing better and taking better photos will help, but it's not going to make me taller, less bald, lol. It does work in a sense. If she tries that on me, then I'll make a move away from her. My mom did that to my dad. She thought he was taking too long to propose, so she started talking to another guy. This made my dad back off from proposing even longer. XD. I've seen more than one bar fight start from exactly that. All men. It's funny cause if you changed men to any other ethnic group or race of people, then it'd be a problem. That's offensive. Stop generalizing entire groups. The lack of self-awareness is insane sometimes. That was an eye-opener for my wife. She was confused and frustrated that I haven't been planning my wedding since I was 8. She'd ask me what flowers I wanted for different spots, and I started answering whatever's cheapest because I really don't have an interest in floral arrangements. Then she'd use words like uplighting as if that's a word I should be intimately familiar with. Lights for the walls. That cost, like, $5K. I could buy 20 lights and make my own uplighting for about $400. A silly version of this, when we're trying to pick out something to watch, my wife is always shocked at the classic movies I haven't seen. Movies like Funny Girl, Beaches, Steel Magnolias. I finally picked up on the pattern, and now just have to remind her that I am, in fact, a man. Which is not to say that these are bad movies. They're just not movies that my parents or friends would have suggested to me. As long as society treats men like defective women, this will continue to be an issue. We're breaking up already? But we have so much history together. A whole 3 seconds worth. Flushed face. I'm a gray/ace man. You know, all those women complaining about how men in relationships only want all the time, and are always coming onto them? Yeah, turns out, they also want all the time, and don't want to initiate, so they end up just as at me as they were at their sex-obsessed exes. Apparently I won't ever bug you for, but I'm down if you let me know that's what you want is also an incorrect answer. Anytime I hear some variant of all men want is sex, it always gives me those if what you smell is all day long, check your shoe vibes. The common denominator in all your relationships is you. Maybe it's not men who are the problem here. Whenever I have with a man, he immediately ghosts me because he got what he wanted. Have you ever considered that you might be bad at it? When they think men are looking for the same thing in a relationship as they. Back in 2014 I got out of a 5-year relationship and was a bit of a mess. I hopped on Tinder and I was absolutely straightforward with absolutely everyone. I said the exact same thing. Hey, I just got out of a long-term relationship, I'm not looking for a relationship, just some banter and fun. Please feel free to unmatch if you are after something more committed, but I can't offer that right now. Anyway, I did that for a few months until I felt ready, then stopped saying it. But during those months I did talk with one girl and we met up, and then she was trying to invite me out to see her friends and family. I told her that I felt uncomfortable with those things and she blew up at me for leading her on and not at least attempting to try a relationship. It was just super awkward because I mentioned it multiple times that I wasn't after those things, and when she invited me to meet her family we'd spent a grand total of 3 hours together in person.